This show defines leadership as involving power, but not the type of power you might understand. We'll discuss the sources of true power in human affairs, and you'll be surprised to learn that power exists within relationship. We'll discuss the good, the common good, and how this relates to leadership. We'll discuss purpose. Leadership is meaningless if it's not aimed at some purpose. And we all have a sense of that without any sort of definition. We all understand that leaders direct us to achieve some good that's shared among those that are united in a common purpose.
The phrase that comes to mind that I use, I think it might be my favorite word right now, at least in my life, is posture. I love posture. Like, what's your posture like? You know, and because I like words that also do have the practical meaning, like, you know, how do you sit? You know, how do you walk into a room?
Right? I suddenly sat differently because when you said that, I was like, oh.
I mean, when I taught, I always did that. I would say posture, and all the kids would sit up straight. You know, I had a bell and a ring, and it was like a joke, you know. But they loved it. They loved to sit up. You know, who could be the most? But what you're doing is you're leading them using a physicality. We have bodies.
Yeah.
You know, Jesus became a man, not an angel, right? Bodies matter.
Yeah.
Bodies matter. You know, literally have matter.
Yeah.
And they matter. Okay. And so when you start to pay attention to how you stand, how you sit, you begin, and then you use that word, you don't have to teach them. They begin to understand when you say, you know, I didn't like your posture when you spoke to Mrs. Smith. They understand that now I'm not talking about their physical posture anymore.
Right.
They're talking about there was a degree of disrespect in how you handled yourself.
Right.
So what's your posture? How do you sit? You know, like, you know, if your posture is good, if you're confident in who you are, if your hips are underneath you and your shoulders are back and you're centered, you'll lead well.
Yeah.
And you're more likely to actually have people follow you because the degree of confidence comes from that, right? You don't want to follow somebody who seems really nervous about what they're doing.
You can't. Confidence leads to character, and it's not just, again, like, I want to keep away from the idea that, you know, there's some sort of transactional approach in all of this. Like it's we'll use paradox, we'll use mystery, because there isn't all of that. There's no easy way to simply cookie cut the solution.
No.
And that's what drives us insane in our modern culture.
And you know, it's kind of like, you know, the spiritual side of things. I mean, look, is it good to teach somebody how to pray? Of course, right? Is it good to write a book on meditation? Sure, why not? But we know, right? We know and we see in the book, and it has a giant face on it, the author. Right. And, you know, and it's a book about teaching you about Jesus, but the author's name is bigger than the word Jesus on the cover. Like, we know that. We see that in our society, right? I mean, so I think it's the same trap, right, that we have to avoid, which is teach people how to pray and teach people spiritual truths if they've been given to you, but never, you know, become spiritually ambitious, right? Where you become, you want to be the guru, right? And it's the same with leaders, the same with coaches, the same. You can't make yourself captain of the team, right? Every single one of those is, and I think it's okay. And yet, even that, what do you say to your son? What do you say to your son if he says, I want to be captain of the team? Is that a bad desire? No, it doesn't seem like a bad desire.
Right.
So, but to the point where it's like, covet not thy neighbor's goods. Yeah. Right? Covet is a great word, right? It's not just a desire for your neighbor's goods. That's okay. Like, I mean, I could want the car you have. Why not? Right. If I want the car that you have so badly that I'm going to change my life and my morals and my ethics and my behavior to acquire it, now I'm coveting. Yeah. Right. And I think, like, we can't covet leadership.
Yeah. You can't covet leadership. And and with my son, who is training to be the next best star for baseball, you know, Major League Baseball teams, when he is out looking for ways to be a leader, oftentimes he finds himself without followers because, you know, it's
a hard lesson, isn't it?
When you're trying to take, but when he just simply focuses on his skill, and he does so in a way that, he sees somebody struggling in one way and notices another person having difficulty in another. And then he notices a certain style of batting that he admires. So then he comes over and spends time with that individual.
Exactly.
Through that.
Exactly.
Through that interaction,
Yes.
suddenly he finds himself being in relationship with those who are listening, guiding, trusting. And that's why I think it's really, in at any given moment, he can come out of a position of leading somebody to being led by them in the same course of a conversation.
Breathing.
And I think, I think it's important that we realize leadership's not a position.
No.
Leadership is not a trait.
No.
Leadership is not a person. Leadership is a relationship.
Yes.
Leadership is an active exchange of two people in relationship that can shift when dependent on who is doing the elevating and who has the mastery of some skill or competency.
I mean, I have a flaw, or perhaps it's a gift. I'm not sure, but I can't help but always think about personal stories, And I think, as you're saying that, I'm going to share one because I think it's relevant. I mean, my wife is going through cancer right now, and you lead that, right?
Yeah.
And then you see the relationship where, for example, I'm going to give what? So she goes, chemo, and you're going to be the guy, right? You're going to lead. And in many ways I do, right? You make sure that everything is, the medical is taken care of, and right. And you're taking care of it. And there was one day where, and I think this is like the maiden with the apple tree, right? That relationship, and anybody who's trying to cut into that relationship that's not from God, right? That's not healthy. And the same with the relationship between colonel and subordinate, and husband and wife, best friends, whatever it may be. So one day I'm, she gets treatment. It's the next day. She's supposed to be feeling terrible. She is, and she's doing it, washing a dish, and she can't use cold water because of sensitivity, chemo and stuff. Anyway, and I have like a headache. I don't feel good. And I'm like, I can't complain, right? I can't complain.
Right.
She saw that I was bothered by something.
Yeah.
And she said to me, this is a lot on you. A lot on me. You got chemo and radiation. And she cut it off, man. She cut that lie off.
Yeah.
Because she started to lead. And she said, that doesn't make any difference. We're talking about you. Yeah. This is a lot on you. Yeah. And that permission to feel the stress and the pain was coached from her, and she was leading me.
Yeah.
And from the outside, you can see where the guy is kind of like, that's shameful. Like it's like complaining about, no.
Yeah.
And I think that's an example of leadership. She led me. And maybe if I have to take credit for anything, I didn't resist it too long. I resisted a little bit and then realized I got to breathe here.
Yeah.
In order to continue to lead her, I have to acknowledge this, that I'm bothered by this too. And then you come back together and then you move forward,
That's powerful stuff.
So I think I imagine there's parallels to people that deal with medical all day long, doctors, that they can't fix that person. And the person dying, I'm sure there are moments where that person actually consoles the doctor for feeling guilty for not being able to. So it's like the word healing comes into place, right?
Yeah.
Healing and permission.
Yeah. That word permission.
Permission.
Howie, that's powerful stuff. Yeah. And I think you're getting at the heart of what the show's all about.
Yeah.
Like the show's all about what you just described when you say permission.
Yeah.
I'm going to nerd out on you a little bit here.
Yeah,
right. So question 104 of Summa Theologiae, Thomas Aquinas' Summa, he speaks about, or he's asking the question on leadership. On obedience, right? What is it, like whether or not obedience is a virtue? He even goes as far as to say, is it a special virtue, right? St. Thomas Aquinas is very technical. Like every word he uses has a very specific and defined meaning to it. And so as he's going through the questions on obedience and whether or not it's proper for a man to be obedient to another man or woman, man or woman, and or if obedience is only owed to God.
Mm.
And so he goes forward to say, no, obedience is proper in relationship. Obedience is, in fact, and he answers that it is a special virtue. It's a special virtue by virtue of the fact that it gives opportunity or occasion for the other virtues to be animated. Obedience is the disposition in the person who is being led into some excellence, into some human good, into humanity, into human nature. If I'm deficient in some way and I lack obedience, then as a result, I lose the capacity to grow in the other virtues, prudence and justice and courage. Obedience is under the species of justice because justice is owing what to do to another. And so by the virtue of obedience, if I accept that I am not deficient in the sense of, not imperfect or deficient in the sense of having a defect, right? Having the defect of being complete.
Yeah,
but
more like a privation.
It's a privation, right? It's a privation. It's being in the sense of not yet fully actualized.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Not being fully actualized. Obedience lays the groundwork or invites the person who is obedient to have the disposition to be led into greater virtues.
Yes.
And so that's why, and I love how you put it when you said you were given the permission to recognize that your wife gave you the permission to recognize that she is going to lead you into a virtue of accepting what you were facing, to confront it, to explore the roots of it, to then incorporate some new virtue that allows you to endure perseverance and forbearance, which is a virtue. One of the four cardinal virtues. And your wife was in that moment leading you into human excellence. She was elevating you into the shared communion of your marriage and as a sacrament. And what a beautiful and powerful witness. And it just, it gives me chills to hear that and to realize like that's leadership in action, right? Like,
that's real.
That's what it looks like in the marriage.